Testosterone has become a taboo topic in sports. And honestly, that makes sense because in professional motorsports, World Anti-Doping Association regulations matter. For drivers and over-the-wall crew athletes, crossing the line into performance-enhancing drugs is not the conversation. But here's the real question. What if balancing healthy hormone levels naturally is actually part of high performance physiology? Because low testosterone doesn't just affect muscle, it affects recovery, it affects focus, drive, mood, cardiovascular health, body composition, libido, fertility, long term vitality, and so much more. And what research demonstrates, and what we often see in clinical practice, is that many drivers and crew athletes over the age of 35 are operating with declining hormone function without even realizing it. Nothing dramatic, just enough to lose the edge. So let's break that down. Yes, welcome back to Breaking Boundaries for Champions, the only high performance health podcast for motorsports professionals. I'm your host, Jeffrey Mort, your certified high performance health coach from Victory Lane Wellness, where we focus on naturally fueled high performance health for drivers, for pit crew athletes, and team leaders looking to optimize performance at the root level. And if you enjoy these conversations around performance, longevity, recovery, and physiology, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Because today's topic is one that, well, honestly, a lot of people avoid talking about, and that is testosterone. And just to be clear, this episode is not about steroid doping. This is about healthy physiology, natural optimization, staying compliant, and extending performance longevity. You see, most people believe declining testosterone is, well, just aging. And yes, hormone production naturally changes with age. Men and women both experience gradual shifts after about age 45 to 50. But if low testosterone were only aging, then every athlete over 35 would decline the same way. And they don't. Some stay sharp, driven, lean, focused, and others recover slower, gain body fat, lose ambition, feel mentally flat, which raises the better question. What's suppressing healthy hormone production? And this is one that actually became personal for me. Back in 2022, my own testosterone levels dropped below 50, and that's 50 picograms per milliliter. And now, just to put that into perspective, that would be more synonymous with a man in his 90s, except I wasn't even 50 years old yet. And honestly, that explained a lot at the time. Lower energy, slower recovery, brain fog, feeling flat, not feeling myself physiologically. Now, in my case, this was connected to a significant viral load from long COVID. And what's interesting is most people would have simply accepted that as getting older, but I knew something deeper was happening. So instead of forcing hormones artificially, I worked the exact naturally fueled high performance health strategies we use today in clinical practice. Things like reducing inflammation, supporting sleep, balancing stress physiology, restoring deficiencies, improving metabolic function, and reducing toxic load. And over time, my testosterone levels naturally climbed back into a healthy range and eventually exceeded over 100 PGs per milliliter. So when I talk about this topic, I'm not just speaking from theory alone, I lived it. And thankfully, I didn't have to resort to humanly unnatural shots or move into the woods and start wrestling grizzly bears while shirtless to get my testosterone back. Although apparently social media thinks that's the official protocol these days. And just to be clear, I'm not giving any medical advice here on the podcast, and this podcast or information is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Hormonal concerns should always be evaluated with a qualified practitioner. And what research demonstrates and what we see in our clinical practice is that testosterone production is highly responsive to stress, inflammation, nutrient status, sleep quality, total toxic load, metabolic health, and more. And so much of that list right there comes into play for any motorsports professional. A simple way to understand this is the body prioritizes survival before reproduction. So when the system perceives stress, testosterone production downshifts because stress production upshifts. So basically, it's a metabolic seesaw between cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and androgens, which are your sex hormones, such as testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, DHEA, things like that. And in motorsports, the stress stacks. If you've been following along with the podcast, this is really the underlying theme of our podcast is the stacking stress, the travel, the sleep disruption, the heat exposure, the adrenaline, the environmental toxicities. And over time, cortisol, the stress hormone, raises, recovery declines, and hormone signaling weakens. Now, you might be wondering what testosterone actually does. Healthy testosterone supports drive and ambition, muscle maintenance, cardiovascular function, cognitive sharpness, libido, fertility, recovery capacity. And yes, this applies to women too. Healthy testosterone is important for women as well. This is not just a male hormone. Now, there are special cases. There's one notable exception to naturally elevated testosterone, and this is specifically just for women with PCOS. So that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. Otherwise, the body generally does not produce more testosterone than it needs naturally. And of course, you're probably interested in why we use saliva testing. One of the biggest misconceptions in hormones is that blood serum testing tells the whole story. But hormones in blood are different. They are bound to proteins, meaning they are not bioavailable. They're not readily usable by the body. Whereas saliva testing measures free hormones, the hormones the body can actually use, and that includes testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, and DHEA. And yes, this can all be done at home, even during race season, because apparently mailing saliva is now more advanced than some people's healthcare strategy. So today I want to go over the three main causes of low testosterone. Number one, health factors. Talking about disease or dysfunctions, so things like autoimmune inflammation or metabolic dysfunction, obesity, blood sugar dysregulation is a big one that affects hormone imbalances, and then liver, kidney, heart, or lung dysfunction. And a major one is well, I should say all of these affect what's called the HPG axis dysfunction. So in integrative health, integrative medicine, functional medicine, there's what we call the HPA axis. This is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Well, there's also the HPG axis, and this is something that not a lot of practitioners are talking about. So the HPG axis, this is the communication system between the brain, which is that's where the hypothalamus is, and the pituitary gland, which is also in that area. These signal the reproductive organs. So the G stands for gonadal, and there can be a disruption in this axis or this communication system where there's a miscommunication between the brain and the reproductive organs. So you can think of it like race control sending signals to the car, and if communication gets disrupted by stress or inflammation, hormone output drops. All right, number two, medications and alcohol. Certainly, medications may suppress hormone production. Things like corticosteroids, chemotherapy for somebody that's going through cancer treatment, and opioids for somebody that has been prescribed pain medication. And a major overlooked factor here is the alcohol. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but alcohol affects liver function, blood sugar, cortisol balance, inflammation, all things that can lower testosterone production naturally. Which is unfortunate news for anyone whose recovery strategy currently includes those victory beers. Now, I'm not against alcohol, but the chronic use or the regular use is certainly going to affect hormone production. All right, number three, and this is kind of a big one. This is really the biggest category in motorsports: lifestyle factors. Talking about sleep disruption. So we want to make sure we're getting the proper amounts of deep sleep. We want to make sure we're getting the proper amounts of REM sleep. These are critical for hormone production. And the target is about 1.5 hours of REM, 2.5 hours of deep. You can track that with an Oura Ring, probably the best device for tracking. Apple Watch, Whoop strap, things like that. Not as good as the Oura Ring, but enough to get your somewhat in the ballpark there. Next is for lifestyle is lack of sunlight exposure. And of course, drivers and crew, they spend weekends outside at the racetrack, but they're covered in fire suits or helmets. So they're really not getting that sun exposure. And we can prove this through a at-home vitamin D3 test. They're just simply not getting enough vitamin D3 from the sun. And vitamin D3 is critical for hormone production. Next in lifestyle category is nutritional gaps, talking about processed food, airport food, track food. It may be delicious, but it may lead to deficiencies in things like zinc, vitamin C, B vitamins, which are all super important, what we call cofactors for hormone production, as well as a micronutrient that's really not talked about very often, but it's called boron, and that plays a huge role in specifically testosterone production. These are all important cofactors for producing testosterone naturally. The next big one for lifestyle is environmental toxicity. Talking about, as I do almost every week, it seems, to nauseum here, exhaust fumes, tire compounds, track chemicals, shop chemicals, solvents, things like that. These can create an internal stress load. And we can run an environmental toxicity test to see your total toxic load in some of these categories here. Now, another big one for environmental toxins and lifestyle, plastics and BPA, bisphenol A. These act as what we call xenoestrogens. These are chemicals that mimic estrogen in the body. And no, microwaving gas station burritos in plastic probably isn't helping hormone optimization either. All right, now, what do we do here? The safe and proven way to support testosterone naturally, and this is totally compliant here. We want to reduce body fat and inflammation, especially visceral fat around the waist. This is very, very important for proper hormone production. We want, and I'm not going to give you a detailed protocol for each one of these check boxes here, but reduce body fat and inflammation. We'll leave that one there. Reduce or eliminate alcohol. I'm not here to be the alcohol police whatsoever. Enjoy responsibly, but just know that every consumption of alcohol is directly affecting hormone production. We want to prioritize sleep. So use the 3-2-1 formula. Eat 3 hours, no more than 3 hours before bedtime. No the 3-2-1 formula. Don't eat 3 hours before bed. Don't drink 2 hours before bed, meaning any liquids so you don't get up and urinate. And the 1 hour before bed is no screen time, 1 hour before bed. There, now we got that. And then, of course, prioritize sleep. 90 minutes of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM sleep. Very important to optimize that as well. We want to buffer stress. This is external stress and internal stress. Today's episode 175. Last week on 174, I gave you the 2 best ways to buffer stress. Go back and listen to that if you haven't already. Strength training. Strength training is a great way to produce testosterone naturally. Definitely want 150 minutes of exercise per week. 2 to 3 sessions of strength training per week is amazing. If you could do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, give your body a chance to recover in between. And then on top of that, zone 2 cardio, talking about 2 to 3 sessions weekly. So how do you know if you're in zone 2 cardio? This is really age dependent. So if you take the number 220 and subtract your age and then multiply that number by zero point 0.6 or 0.7, so 60% or 70%, that would give you your range for your zone 2 cardio. So for an example, myself, 52 years old, 220 minus 52, that is 168. That is my estimated maximum heart rate. And then I multiply 168 by 0.6. That gives me 101 beats per minute. And I multiply 168 by 0.7. That it gives me 118 beats per minute. My zone 2 range personally, or for a 52-year-old male, is 101 to 118 beats per minute. That is really generalized because I am on the healthier side because I implement these high performance health strategies. So my max heart rate is a little closer to just below 200, actually. So my zone 2 cardio range is probably between 120 and 130. Next on the checklist for lifestyle is eliminate those BPAs and plastics. Very, very important. We also want to restore cofactors. So these are things like zinc, vitamin D3, vitamin C, your B vitamins, all of them, not just one B vitamin specifically, and boron as well. Those are cofactors for testosterone production, and we can test all those right at home. We have tests for those various vitamins and minerals as well. Another big one here for lifestyle is healthy fats, not just saturated fats. You know, a lot of people say stay away from saturated fats. These are actually important in a healthy balance. And then monounsaturated fats as well. So saturated fats, things like eggs, and grass-fed meats. And then the monounsaturated fats would be things like olive oil, avocado, nuts, you know, specifically macadamia nuts or walnuts, and then coconut oil. And you don't need a lot of each of these. You know, if we're talking about oils, 2 to 3 tablespoons with lunch and dinner maximum. And then if we're talking about the the eggs, the nuts, I should say, you can put those in your breakfast smoothie. That would be a great way to get a serving of these throughout the day. The grass-fed meats, you don't want to overdo the red meat too much. I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole right now, but healthy fats are very important for hormone production. And finally, on the checklist here, reduce sugar and processed foods. It's really that simple. You want a natural. I'm going to do an episode on how we can implement the longevity diet for travel, right? In motorsports, you're traveling almost every single week except for the off season. And there's a longevity diet that is proven from the blue zones around the world. I'll do an episode on that as well. So remember that athlete that was recovering slower, that was gaining body fat, losing the drive, and just feeling mentally flat? Well, that may not be just aging. It may be physiology asking for support. The white flag's out, so that means it's the final lap here on Breaking Boundaries. Low testosterone is often not the problem. It's the signal. And in motorsports, the edge doesn't come from forcing performance artificially. The edge comes from optimizing the systems that create performance naturally. That's why we say naturally fueled high performance health. If you're the kind of person who's serious about optimizing performance at the root level, you can apply to work with Victory Lane Wellness at victorylanewellness.com. Programs are built for drivers, for pit crews and athletes, and team owners that are committed to precision, resilience, and long-term vitality. And every enrollment supports Race for a Reason, providing advanced functional testing for chronically ill children through racing-related charities. We will see you in Victory Lane. Bye-bye.